Okay guys, today I'm going to show you this video. A little old. It depends on, the relevancy to you per se, but, let's check this out. Here we go. Hey baby, I see you there. Don't forget to share the crap out of this. This video is about genetic manipulation. No longer just science fiction, ladies and gentlemen. No longer just science fiction.
You have specified hazel eyes, dark hair, and fair skin.
Designer children, engineered to perfection.
Would you drink human breast milk that came from a cow?
Human cells have successfully grown inside a pig embryo.
Glow-in-the-dark cats.
De-extinction. And it's not science fiction at all.
And scientists announced today they have made a major breakthrough in the quest to create life in a laboratory for the first time.
Run.
For the first time, scientists have created artificial DNA, the universal genetic code.
They have produced a living cell in which the active DNA was put together by computers. What does this mean for science? And does it mean there is now synthetic life?
They go way more beyond.
Scientists at the Scripps
cloning.
Research Institute in San Diego, California, created an organism not found in nature. They did it by adding artificial genetic building blocks. DNA is the genetic material the body uses to store the unique blueprint for each human being. The information exists as a code based on four chemicals, nicknamed A, T, C, and G. They pair up with each other in different combinations to create 20 amino acids, the building blocks of proteins. The Scripps team created two artificial chemicals called X and Y. They inserted them inside the cells of simple bacteria. That created the potential for 172 amino acids and proteins that do not currently exist. Those proteins could be used to create a new generation of drugs and vaccines. Adriana Heggie is the director of the Genome Technology Center at NYU Langone Medical Center.
What I think is fantastic about this technology is that we basically were able to cheat evolution and to trick this organism into accepting molecules that do not exist in nature.
Hotter than they are in real life.
World-renowned geneticist Craig Venter has been trying to unlock the mystery of life for 15 years. What have you achieved?
Well, we announced today the first synthetic cell. Instead of having a genetic relative that it evolved from, the parent of this cell is a computer.
What Venter has done is astonishing. With just 4 bottles of chemicals off the shelf in his lab, his team replicated more than 1 million bits of genetic code to create a living organism. Here's how it worked. They isolated bacterial cells and removed all of their genetic material, the DNA from inside. Then they took those 4 bottles of chemicals and used them to create new genetic material. They transplanted it into the empty cell. That material, that new cell booted up and
that shows that life is not a mystery, that's a mysterious force.
Isn't this what ancient astronaut theorists say that aliens did to us?
That infuses things, that makes them come alive. If you put the right genetic message in the right order, put it into the right environment, it will come alive.
But along with promise comes precaution.
Like any great scientific innovation, this has enormous promise and enormous peril. This may allow us to make more virulent viruses. This could unleash a bacterium on the world that has properties we didn't expect that could cause great disease or ecological damage.
Scientists will surely debate whether this is truly creating new life, but no one can deny the potential impact of this achievement. Venture says that within a year, this technology will be producing vaccines, and in the future, bacteria may be used as powerhouses to generate energy and clean up oil spills.
The Salk Institute recently created a human-pig hybrid. Why? The research project studies the possibility of human organs grown inside a pig fetus for transplantation.
Yes, you heard that right. Human cells have successfully grown inside a pig embryo. This is one step closer to the possibility of growing livers and other human organs inside of animals.
Scientists have potentially discovered a way to stop genetic diseases from being spread to future generations. They did so by altering the DNA in gremlin cells, like sperm, embryos, and eggs. They plan to only use this new method to correct disabilities or diseases, and not to improve or enhance a human's ability or state of health. This finding is revolutionary for the future of healthcare around the world.
In labs across the country, they're working with a new tool that can precisely edit genes inside living cells. It's a genome editing tool called CRISPR-Cas9, and it's being described as a game changer.
I like to call it a molecular scalpel for cells. It allows scientists to make a very precise change in the DNA of a cell or organism that could do something like correct a mutation that would otherwise cause disease.
Jennifer Doudna, a molecular biologist at UC Berkeley, was one of the scientists who developed it.
Okay, I don't know if anyone else has caught this recently, but the other day they were also talking about the fact that they were now looking into the fact that sperm can survive radiation in space. Now with this in mind, let's finish watching this some more.
It's a technology that just allows a level of precision that we haven't had in the past.
Now it's being used in laboratories across the country in plant and animal research. Scientists have their eye on using it for everything from coming up with cures for blood disorders like sickle cell disease to combating antibiotic-resistant superbugs. At this laboratory outside Washington, scientists are using it on zebrafish to knock out genes that cause deafness.
The technology is moving very fast. It's almost every scientist is interested in the concept of genome engineering has shifted to using these techniques because they work so well.
Harvard University scientists are even using the tool on mosquitoes with
Can anyone say Gattaca?
dreams of eliminating malaria. But the rapid embrace of the technology also has scientists concerned.
Just because we can build a CRISPR gene drive to spread a trait through the wild population does not mean that we should.
A top concern, editing so-called germline cells, meaning human sperm, eggs, and embryos, where DNA changes could then be passed down from one generation to the next.
Inside a converted shoe factory in Shenzhen, China, scientists have launched an ambitious search for the genes linked to human intelligence.
It must be over 60% of your IQ is decided by your parents.
60%?
Yeah, so we want to prove it.
The man in charge of the project is 21-year-old science savant Zhao Bowen.
We're looking for the smart people. Those that has an IQ higher than 145 points.
Zhao works for the Chinese biotech giant.
Okay, that's cool. What about those of us who, yeah, we're smart, mostly. I'm talking about those of us who have other attributes as well. Let's continue.
At BGI, which owns more gene sequencing machines than anyone in the world.
It's just continuously generating tons of data.
Tons of data taken from the genetic makeup of more than 2,000 of the brightest people BGI could find, most of them scientists and math wizards.
We want to see what's in common.
What part on their genomes are they the same?
Yeah, that's important.
One of the people selected and who volunteered his DNA is Boston software developer Jeffrey Kaufman.
This is something that, if executed well, could be very positive for our society and for the world.
But discovering the genetics of intelligence could also be controversial. It would then be possible to test a human embryo to learn if the baby is destined to be smart. In vitro laboratories already allow parents to use genetic tests to screen their embryos not just for disease, but to choose embryos based on gender and other physical traits. BGI believes that one day there might be a test for IQ. So in the future, you're saying, yes, people may well select for intelligence.
The technology will be there.
If that day comes, Kaufman believes that children chosen for intelligence would have an advantage.
Given the choice, most parents are going to rather have a more intelligent baby than a less intelligent baby, sort of all other things considered, and that for the most part, that seems like it should be a good thing.
Yet the fear is that China could unleash a future of designer children, engineered to perfection, the stuff of science fiction.
You have specified hazel eyes, dark hair, and fair skin.
The 1997 film Gattaca envisioned the ethical dilemmas.
Speaking of Gattaca,
in a society that screened out human imperfection.
I have taken the liberty of eradicating any potentially prejudicial conditions, premature baldness, myopia, alcoholism, and addictive susceptibility, propensity.
I've thought of a wonderful present for you. Shall I?
The government gave a conditional thumbs up to embryonic gene editing research. By moving or improving components of human DNA, this new gene editing technology could enhance someone's physical and biological characteristics, as well as eradicate a lot of diseases. Until recently, lawmakers had banned any form of gene editing.
In addition to the DNA of the mother and the father, material from a third person is used in the process. The vast majority of a cell's DNA is located in the nucleus, but a tiny fraction is outside the nucleus in structures called mitochondria. These mitochondrial genes are inherited only from
okay, they're going into high school science now.
The mother, and in rare cases can be defective. These defects can cause problems such as blindness, muscle disorders, and neurological illness. One proposed technique would work this way. A woman's nucleus is removed from her egg, leaving behind her unhealthy mitochondria. Her nucleus, containing the majority of her genes, replaces the nucleus in the donor egg, leaving an egg with the mother's nucleus and the donor's healthy mitochondria.
A baby comes into this world unlike any other baby has before. For the first time, doctors in Ukraine used a new type of three-parent IVF technique so that a previously infertile couple could have a child. To clarify, this isn't the first child born with DNA of three parents, but she was the first to be conceived using a technique called pronuclear transfer. In this instance, doctors in Kiev combined the father's sperm with the mother's egg and then placed those genes into an egg that was donated by another woman. Then they implanted that egg in the mother's womb, and on January 5th, she gave birth naturally to a baby girl. The baby has her parents' genetic identity with a trace amount of DNA from the donor woman. But her conception is controversial. For one, the science of three-parent IVF is new and still highly experimental. It also raises a number of ethical concerns and fears over the possibility of a future with so-called designer babies.
There are almost 7.5 billion people on Earth. They come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. 15,000 humans are born to proud parents every hour. But over the years, some have tried to find another way to create life. Human cloning.
You're copies of people out here in the world. What? Clones.
Its possibility has proven controversial. 19 years ago, 19 European countries took it upon themselves to ban human cloning.
You can't just go around cloning people. That's crazy.
The practice is broadly seen as dangerous and unethical, and opponents say it could be prone to abuse, arguing it will lead to a generation of humans whose organs and tissues will be harvested.
The shroud of the dark side has fallen. Begun.
Okay. Definitely interesting. Well, let's keep going.
The Clone War has.
With the cloning of Dolly in 1996, the idea of human cloning became a hot topic of debate. To date, no known human clone has ever been produced. But in 2008, researchers cloned 5 human embryos. This was seen as the first step towards using cloning techniques for biomedical research and therapy.
Okay, we're gonna just say this for a minute. Yeah. Definitely interesting that they had to add this to it.
When I was a boy, I had a Time Life book called The Birds. In it was a section showing the few U.S. species we'd already lost to extinction. The great auk, the Carolina parakeet, the heath hen. The biggest picture, though, was reserved for the passenger pigeon. Once numbering 3 billion or more, this species flew in vast flocks, passing overhead for days at a time. Witnesses described seeing a feathered river in the sky. Our hungry, growing nation also saw them as delicious and inexhaustible and hunted them to near extinction in about 50 years. In the book was a picture of the very last one, named Martha, stuffed and sitting on a perch in the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. Next to her was a sign that said, "Extinct." From 3 billion passenger pigeons to none. I still can't believe it. Martha died 100 years ago on September 1st, 1914. Her demise proved to be a watershed event. People finally began to care about the fate of our nation's wildlife. Conservation groups sprang up, including those formed by hunters to protect habitat, allowing many species to flourish, including grassland birds and waterfowl. This pigeon story doesn't end there, though. In a scene somewhat out of Jurassic Park, scientists today are actually trying to resurrect this grand bird. Starting with DNA from preserved museum specimens, the passenger pigeon's genetic code will eventually be
Do I see future zombie apocalypse? No, I don't.
spliced into the living cells of a close cousin, the band-tailed pigeon, with the hope of creating something that looks, sounds, and perhaps even acts like the real thing. They're calling the process de-extinction. And it's not science fiction at all.
De-extinction is an effort to bring back species that are known to be extinct.